This is Gemara and Shekalim Daf Vav, learning for this month, the month of Nisan, as we enter into Pesach, has been sponsored. Lili Nishmas Chaim Mordechai Ben Naftali Tzvi. The Neshama should have an Aliyah. The schos, the learning of the entire Chabura should be a tremendous schos. Lili Nishmasai. Of course, Achelim many B'Mei Chaim and Sar Shalom Sivim Reizi Sar Baskanandol Itavasim As Chayzar Yisrael Memindol Aliyah Zer Paris Vin Deshalei Shama Asnami Vashavigav Shirachan Valdavini Tvi Vishmol Ben Tehila Daniel Rechan Rizol Melka Chaya Bazinu Lebrachav Sevimusta Dinina Ben Shindol Shena Mindol Simul Chtavi Ben Avigal Vashativ Ben Feged Ver Michal Zever Nasir Lehuva Menachem Mendel Ben Toiba B'Sar Chali Yisrael Was Choshirach Vataliyah Basita and Menachem Mendel Ben Elisheva. We pick it up on the bottom of the Hey Amid Beis. About 12 lines in the bottom. The first word on line is v'chash. We're in the middle of discussing the case that we discussed in the Mishnah, where a shliach is bringing the machzah shekel for the bailim, and the shliach goes and he takes it for himself. And we discussed different cases whether it's considered that the shliach is over mi'ilah or not. But asks the Gemara of even if he takes it for himself and he gives it to the Beis HaMikdash, but how do we know that it's going to be used for a karban? We know that they gave the machzah shekel, and as we spoke about yesterday, the gizbar or someone in the Beis HaMikdash would come, he would take out a whole handful of the coins and use them to buy the karbanos. Then there were the leftovers that were used for other communal projects. So says the Gemara, how do you know that the coin that this shliach gave is going to be used to buy a karban? Maybe it'll be left over, and therefore it's only going to be used for the other projects, and seemingly there should be no me'ilah. Says the Gemara, is there me'ilah in the shirayim, the leftovers? There aren't. So the Gemara is bothered that seemingly the shliach should not be over me'ilah. Answers the Gemara, Ramir Mayalim b'shirayim, Ramir also there is me'ilah. You could be over even on the leftovers, and therefore, according to Ramir, the Mishnah would be discussing that the shliach would be over in Mi'ilah. But the obvious question is that it only works with the Mishnah with Rameir. But we don't want to say the whole Mishnah is Rameir. Answers the Gemara, just like we answered yesterday that we're discussing a discernible coin, like Shalbeis Gamliel Shayab Miskavim Vitar Malishmai. Like we spoke about at the very end of yesterday's shiur, that the case is that like the people of Rav Gamliel, they would do is they would give a coin, and they would follow the coin, and they would watch that the gizber would go particularly to grab that coin when they take the karbanos, because they wanted the coin of the house of Rav Gamliel. But it was a special coin. A coin was a bit discernible to the eye of the beholder, to the eye of the owner. Similarly over here, the coin was discernible, and therefore he knew that it was chosen in the first grabbing and used for the karbanos. Says the Gemara, Ma. What hana exactly is there? You only over me'ilah. We know that if you got hanas, what hana is there when the shliach goes and gives the machzah shekel for himself? Amar Avavim b'shem Rabbanan d'Taman and Kivish Bezdin Reil Mashkin, like we saw in the first Mishnah. The Bezdin can go and take collateral from you, and now that you gave the machzah shekel, they're not going to come and bother you. That is called the hanam. So we concluded the Mishnah. What you're allowed to do with Meiser Sheni, that you're not allowed to use it for the machzah shekel. The Chsiv, it says in the Torah, B'char sheyivchar l'Hashem b'mehima, lo yakdish ish es kol shehu kadosh. And on this we darshan, we learn out in kedusha chala alav, the other sanctity will not be chala on something that already has kedusha. Ketzidu Isis, what do? Maybe sell shel chulin. You take a coin of chulin v'aymer ba'is Meiser Sheni b'chol makom shein, the money on Meiser Sheni wherever it is should be deconsecrated in mechulalin al sel hazeh v'ayis sell on that coin nitfas shem Meiser Sheni, and that coin has the dinim on Meiser Sheni, but Nashar Nasa Shekalim, and everything else will be Shekalim, and that's how you would rectify that issue that you would have. We move along to Vav Amud Aleph, to today's daf, a new Mishnah, the third Mishnah on this parak, which of course, again, we point out that the Mishnayos are called halacha. Hopefully the terminology is slowly coming together for everyone. Says the Gemara. Says the Mishnah, if someone is collecting, receiving of money for his machzah shekel, and he says, and he says, these, which we'll see what this means, should be for my machzah shekel. The excess, and he ended up giving more than the machzah shekel value. The excess is a voluntary obligation. There is no kedusha at all on the excess, that which we did, which of course we can understand. The question being, does he have in mind, does he have das that everything here should be the machzah shekel, or only the precise value that he has to give? And says the Gemara, she'evi mehen shkalai, let's say he says, that which I will bring from these, important words, from these, I'll bring my shekel, then Shavin Mutar Chulin, everyone agrees that the excess is going to be Chulin, because he didn't say all of these coins. He said some of these, from these, therefore the excess is Chulin. Elu lechatasi, a different wordage. Let's say he says these, seemingly referring to the whole bunch, should be for my chatos, then Shavin Meiser Nadava. Everyone agrees that you can't say the rest of it is Chulin and is not Kaddish, because he said these. So it's going to be a voluntary obligation. Similarly, case number 4, Shevi Meir Chatasi, from these I'll bring my Karman Chatas. Shavin Shamayzer Chulin, next is going to be Chulin like the previous case. Amar Rav Shimon ma bein Shekalim Chatos. What's the difference between Shekalim and a Chatos? Elo shel Shekalim yishlam kitzva, Chatos yidam kitzva. The Karban Shekalim has a kitzva. Whereas, meaning it has a set limit, which we'll see more in the Gemara, l'chatas ilain kitzvah, there's different levels of chatas that you could bring, and therefore it's more quickly assumed that all the money will be for the chatas, because there's no threshold limit, maximum on the carbon chatas. Rav Yehuda imer af l'shkalim ilain kitzvah. No, Rav Yehuda says, seemingly the machzah shekel, there's no limit, which of course is difficult. What do you mean there's no limit? Machzah shekel. So he explains that it was all totally in the time. They came up from Galos, dark coinais. They originally would give dark coinais, like we learned yesterday, these golden coins are worth 4.5 shekels. Then they would give slime worth 2. Dinarim, they wanted to give even a smaller amount of dinarim. They said that is too much, that is too low, you have to give more than that. Everyone is equal. Maybe beselavs, maybe b'shtayim, maybe b'shalish. Says Rav Shimon, it's true that over time the coin morphed into different values. But says Rav Shimon, but everyone as a whole had to bring the same amount. Whereas when it came to the Karban Chatas, that's not true. Everyone could bring that which they felt was befitting their monetary bracket. Says the Gemara, Hamachanis, actually more precisely, the one who saves up, the case of the Mishnah again, that you saved up these coins, and these coins are for my machzah shekel. Says the Gemara of Yosi V'Shem Rav Lazer, which you see many times that aleph is dropped, not Elazar, but Lazer Mai, Pligin B'machnes Perutbreit. The case of the Mishnah is when you collect the Shekalim Perutbreit piece by piece, Avul Ba'omer Elu Lishkali, but if you took a whole group and said all of these are for my machzah shekel, Kol HaMamayda, everyone agrees, Shemutarim Nedava, that they are part of the Beis HaMikdash, and you can't say that there's excess and it should be Chulin, because you said these as one collective group. That is Rav Lazer. Rav Chia Rav Bibi B'Shem Rav Lazer, sorry, that was Rav Yosi B'Shem Rav Lazer. Now Rav Chia Rav Bibi, they reported Mabligim B'machnes Perutbreit. Now the case is when they collected in pieces, the exact opposite, that if you say that these should be, then what happens is, then they all have a status of Chulin, the reason being that he did not intend to have anything more than he was supposed to, and therefore the excess is going to be Chulin and not going to have any Kedusha, because that wasn't his mindset. Omer Rav Chia Mastita Mesayel Rav Bibi, says Rav Chia, the Mishnah is approved to Rav Bibi. Rav Bibi was the second opinion that said the excess is going to be Chulin. That's now we learned in our Mishnah. Omer Rav Shimon Mamich Kol Lechatos. What's the difference? El Shashkolim Yishlam Kitzva Lechatos Yishlam Kitzva. So what is the case? In Ba'omer, if he says, Sha'avi mehen shkalai, if he said that I'm going to bring from them the shkalim, kol amamayt, everyone agrees with our chulin. So that cannot be the case of this agreement. If you said I'll bring from them my chatas again, everyone agrees that the excess is going to be chulin because he said mayhem from all these. So what is the case where they're going to be arguing? When someone says that these should be for my shekel, so when it comes to shkalim, since the Torah sets the limit, Mutarim, Chulin, the excess is going to Maisar, and Chulin, excess is going to be Chulin. Chatos, Mutarim, the Dava. So it's a clear cut proof to the opinion of Rav Bibi that said that if you collect in police mail, it's one thing. But if you said Elu Lishkali, the excess is going to be Chulin, like we just saw, the Elu Lishkali the excess is going to be chulin. Says the Gemara, my Avilei Rav Yosi b'shem Rav Eliezer. How's he going to answer? We just have a clear proof from our Mishnah to Rav Bibi. So what is the first opinion that says that the Ma'aser is going to be Nadava? How does he answer? Says the Gemara, Pasar Law, he's going to interpret, he's going to explain B'machlis Parot B'ray to Beis Hillel. In the case the Mishnah is going that you separate it piece by piece. The Mishnah never differentiated. So he's going to explain the case of the Mishnah is piece by piece according to Beis Hillel. Asks the Gemara, V'atanina Ma'aser Shekalim chulin, but we learned that the excess of the Shekalim should be chulin. This is going to be a Mishnah Amud Beis, and this seemingly is according to everyone. So there's a kasha on Rav Yosi again. Answers Rav Yosi, Pasla B'machlis Parut B'ray to Beis Hillel. The same answer. The case is that you brought them in piece by piece, and we're going with Beis Hillel. The Gemara now continues, and we're going to skip the parentheses as we basically do based on the Goyin, and the Gemara explains, I'm mafresh shkaloi, v'savar shu chayiv, v'nimsa she'inei chayiv loy kiddush. New case, says the Gemara, let's say you separated your shekel, and then you think you have to give your machzah shekel, then you remember, a bit absent-minded, you remember 1 second, I gave my machzah shekel yesterday. Loy kiddush halacha is that which you separated again is not kedusha. To tell you it's a mistake, and therefore it does not have to go to the base Hamikdash. If you separated 2 items and you thought to shkalim, you thought that you're chayiv to shkalim, chayiv shnayim v'nimsa sheina chayiv ela achad, and you realize you only chayiv 1. Oisaya sheni my avile. What do you do with the second coin? Nishmana min hada. We heard from over there, meaning quoting a brayso to explain this question. A similar case. You separated 2 animals for a carbon basach. Exact case like we're looking for. What do you do with those 2? You let mom, and that's the proof. The excess money goes for the communal needs of the Beis Hamikdash. And how can you say that these are going to be the for the Nadava? So the Gemara is a bit bothered by this final answer. And therefore the extra should be chulin. Now we continue. Rav Yehuda, which if you take a look back in the Mishnah, there was no Rav Yehuda, it was Rabbi Yehuda. And because the so what did Rav Yehuda teach us? He was the one that taught us the progression over time, that that which they gave started with shkalim, darkoinim, etc. On this, the Gemara explains darkoinim. What is a darkoin? Dinarim. It is golden dinars. Chazu lishkal slayim. Then they went and they started giving slayim kishmuin. Says the Gemara. Chazu lishkol slayim kishmuim. That what is a sela? That which it sounds like 2 slayim is 2 sela. Chazu lishkol tabayin. Pligi slayim. Pligi slayim. Says the Gemara. Then they wanted to give tabayin. What were tabayin? Half slayim. Pikshu lishkol dinarim. They wanted to give dinarim. Kartim. Says the Gemara. What is a dinar? It's a kartim, which is a quarter of the amount. V'kiblu them on that amount. That's too little. How do we know that? Min hadas, we see amidu aleinu mitzvah is lasei shlish shekel b'shani. You have to give 1/3 of the shekel during the year. Lavaydis beis alkeinu. So we see they set a low threshold, exactly the amount, and anything less than that. So they wanted to give dinarim. They said, "I'm sorry, that is too low." So from here we saw the progression over time, the different values of the machzah shekel that you would give. But one thing is that there's always a limit, a bottom line. You can't give less than that. Explains the Gemara. Rav Chalkia, b'shem Rav Acha, mikan shetzar gadol l'shlolish shkoloi. We're darshaning the pasuk that we just quoted a few different times. Says Rav Chalkia, you know what the pasuk means? It means you have to give 3 times shkalim throughout the year. Bashana says now it refers to the machzah shekel. It refers to staka. Mikan shein matir chanal tzibur yos migul bashana. Similarly, we learn out for the pasuk that we don't bother the congregation to give more than 3 times a year. Again, about staka, not machzah shekel. Amar Rav Avim mikan the gimel slayin. From here we have a makar to the 3 types, the 3 slugs that they would collect. Mikan shalosh kubais. From here we see that there would be 3 boxes. That there's 3 separations from their boxes. Now we continue with some psukim about that which happened to be Samigdash Ksiv. It says in the Torah about 15 lines from the bottom. First word line is Ksiv. Anyone who passes by. Rav Yehuda, Rav Nechami, Chadam Levni Shechato Machsa Shekel, Machsa Yoim. I'm sorry, because they sinned during halfway the day. The Chata Egel Yidu Machsa Shekel Yitkim Machsa Shekel. But Chadamar, in another opinion, says the Gemara. Chadamar, what's the reason they're giving the Fishachatu B'Shei Shais? They sin 6 hours into the day. But you have to give machzah shekel davar shita garmasin, which is valued at 6 garmasin. Rabbi Yeshua ben Nechemia b'shem Rabbi Yeshua v'Yechlam ben Zakkai v'Yisha Avrah serves. Excuse me, they were over on the stairs that did rice when they served the egel. They have to give 10 gira, which is worth a half shekel. Reb Rachia, Reb Levi, B'Shem Rish Lakish, Lafi, Shamachra, B'Chayr, Shal Rachel. They sold the firstborn of Rachel, obviously Yosef HaTzadik, how much they sell him for? B'Esrim Kasef, for 20 silver coins. So we have the din of Bechar, of firstborn. They have to give a Esrim Kasef, 20 Kasef, which we know is 5 Slayim. Rapichas b'shem Rav Levi the Vinamachru b'Kaira b'Chayra shal Rachel b'Esrim Kesef. They sold him for 20 Kesef. Naval kol echav echem in Tiva. Every one of them had to give a Tiva. Lefichei kol echav echem noisich kolai Tiva. Those were different drashas, exactly learning out with regard to different donations given to the Beis Hamikdash. But we flip over now to Vavam Beis, and we have another fabulous Mishnah. Halacha Dalid says the Mishnah. Haimer muter shkalim chulin. What is the excess of chalim of shkalim? I'm sorry, is chulin. Is no kedusha. Meiser asir seifa. The seifa was the flour that was brought for the kohen gadol's carbon in the minchas chavitin. So if there was leftover flour, meiser kinei zavim kinei zavos. Leftover birds from the different karbanis of Zav and Zava. Bikini Yoladais, Chatais, Vashamais, Mutarim, the Dava, the excess is going to be an Adava. Zaklaus, the Mishnah speaks out the following rule. Anything that you bring as a Chatas or a carbon, Asha Mutarim, the Dava. The excess is the Nadava. Meiser Oila, now the Mishnah concludes that was all about Shlamim and Ayla, but but the excess of an ayla is that of an ayla. Meiser mincha lemincha, meiser shlamim leishlamim, meiser pesach leishlamim. As we know that the pesach after Korban Pesach serves as a shlamim. Meiser nazir, meiser nazir lene dava. Says the Gemara. Let's figure out exactly what's going on in this mishnah. Amar Rav Yezi ad ana taman. While I was over there in Babel Shamas, called Rav Yehuda. I heard Rav Yehuda shal Shmuel. He asked Shmuel, "If shkala you mace." Let's see, someone gives the machzah shekel. He separates it. I'm sorry, he doesn't actually give it. And then what happens? He's nifter. What do we do over here? Hifresh skalai umes. Amar le yiblu nedava. The money goes to nedava's voluntary offerings to Beis Hamikdash because we can't give it for the precise amount because the father's no longer. Meiser asir zeifa. You have access from this flour for the minchas chavitin shalai of the kohen gadol. Rav Yechlam yelichem liyam melch. You got to get rid of it. Rav Lezer amar yiblu nedava. That you use it for different voluntary obligations in the Beis Hamikdash. Masnit and Bliya. Rav Yechlam says the Gemara that our Mishnah is in deference to this, because what did the Mishnah say? Mother Shekalim Chulin Ma'isar Sir Zeifa Ma'isar Kini Zav Mutar Ma'isar Kini Yolada is Chatais Vashamais Mutarim Nedava. We said in the Mishnah that X is going to be a Nedava, and you just taught me not that way. It explains the Gemara. My Avilah Rav Yechon. What should Rav Yechon tell you? Pasar la Moiser Asiri Zaiva Shel Minchas Chayta Shel Kol Yisrael. That what is Rav Yechon going to do with the Mishnah that says that this extra Asir Zaiva of the Kohen Gadol is going to go for other karbanos? Rav Yechon is going to explain Pasar la Moiser Asir Zaiva. He answers again. Pasar lashon of interpretation. It means the Taret. An answer. He answers it. That what's the case referring to? That you have a 10th Ephah of Shal Minchas Chayta, of his Minchas Chavit, Shal Kol Yisrael, that you bring it together with that Minchas Chavit, and if you have the Kohen Gadol left over, use it for a similar, like, carbon. Says the Gemara, Rav Yesi Aymar, says Rav Yesi, Alda Alil, on this, Alda Alil Abba Bar, Ba. Regarding this halacha that Abba Bar Ba, he wasn't happy. They ain't an amrin, because they used to say in Bavel, how do you know the Karban Pesach is offered as a Karban Shlamim? They should remind us back to good old Pesachim days, Tamim Nishchat days. How do we know that Karban Pesach turns into a Karban Shlamim? Amalaymar. The minatin Karban lezever Shlamim. Calls you minat soin. it didn't have to say minatzayin karbana lizevach shlamim. What's the actual word lizevach? Of course, it's a carbon. It says if you sacrifice from the sign. So what's lizevach? Kolshu min sign ba shlamim. And therefore, anything which is a min sign, that's going to be going to end up being a shlamim, and that's the makar that the Karban Pesach at the wrong time will end up a shlamim. Hayesivain, but on these Abu Barba asked as follows: Hayesivain is lashon of a question that it says that the oila is going to be from the sign, but according to what you just said, what should come out? It should come out that the excess oila should be a shlamim. Why are you telling me that we saw in the Mishnah that excess oila is going to be and oila? So says the Gemara that what does the pasuk mean? It means something that only comes from sign. That's when it turns into shlamim. And therefore the oila breaks the rules. And so they asked further and they were bothered. What about the Karban Asham? That the Karban Asham also as well only comes from sign, and therefore it should only be a shlamim. But yeah, we know that the Mishnah taught us that if you have an excess asham, it's brought as a asham, not as a shlamim. On that explains the Gemara, Rabbi Bun Bar Kahana, minat tzayin davar shuba mikol atzayin. Anything can be brought from all the tzayin, meaning it can be from all different types of animals. Yatza asham. The asham only comes from the edelim bilvad. On this says the Gemara, b'chol atar at amre ma. Generally, the min. That the word min in the pasuk comes to detract. Mikan atmar min l'rabbis. You learned that the word min comes to include. Amarav Manach Anami min lemayit. Really, it is being mamayit, but something different. Mia shein ba shteishanim, mia shein ba nekeva. That it comes to exclude cases as well, that the asham cannot be brought from a 2-year-old animal, nor from a nikeva. Again, Abba Barba sitting over there, and he asks again, v'kavi asham. And with regard to the asham nami min l'mayidu, by the asham it also says the word min to exclude. Sheinabal min ha'elim bilvad, that only comes from the elim or the gersa changes to the kavasim bilvad. Hayesivain. So on this he asks, v'aksivim min ha'tzayin karbanai. That's the Torah. It says in the Torah that if it's come as a carbon from the goats or the sheep, that it's going to be a carbon oila. Me'ato, what do we see from over here? Moiser Pesach ba'oila. We see that the excess is a carbon oila, but we said that's not true. We said it should be a shlamim. Again, this really is the crux of the whole discussion that we had so many times in Psachim, how the excess of a carbon Psachim is not an oila, rather it's a shlamim. On that, Rav Ovan explains or Avon Mishan and Davar Shuaich Lachila Davar Shehu Lachila Mishan Davar Shu Lachila Davar Shehu Lachila. You could substitute and you could change an eating animal to an eating animal, but not an eating animal for a not eating animal. Amar Yusi Bar Bon Mishan Kachem Kalim the Shem Kachem Kalim could always switch kedusha of the items to like kedusha Kalim to Kalim. However, Kachem Kalim the Shem Kachem you cannot raise up the level. And now we're going to conclude with a discussion that exactly when you shech the Karban Pesach in the wrong time, what exactly is the halacha? Rav Yechanan Amar says Rav Yechanan Dal Rav Chanina Di Inun Amrit. On the days Rav Chanina went up and he said, Eina Pesach Mishtana l'shem shlamim. The Korban Pesach is now brought as a shlamim. Elikein shachtu l'shem shlamim. It's only if you had intent to shacht it as a shlamim. Bavani Omer says Rav Chanina. That was Husi Bar Bon. But says says Rav Chanina. I was Rav Yechon Shem Rav Chanina. Now says Ani Omer. Afilu shachtu l'shem Ayla. Still the halacha will not change. So Amar Rav Ila explaining the end of that brayso time is Rav Yechon ben Atzayim Karban Elazevach Shlamim. Kol Zevach Bashlam, and that's where Rav Yechon learned it out from the pasuk that everything was which is A zevach, that's the carbon. Umishtan el-machshavas psal, and then you have a bad intention. Hey, chavi dashach l'shem oila. What's the case? If you had an oila, amanas lizvik dama lemachar, you did an oila for the wrong purpose. So says the Gemara, that's why it's going to be possible. Again, we're trying to figure out when you shach the carbon shlamim for a different purpose, what is the psal? But here the Gemara equates it to the oila. But in that says the Gemara, very nice, become makam possible. What's the difference? If it was kosher and afterwards became possible, was possible along, the bottom line is it's possible. On that explains the Gemara, no. Ain't tamer mishtan l'machshavas psol pigol. Ain't tamer mishtan l'machshavas psol pigol. The din of pigol, which is that if you have intent to do one of the 4 primary avodas at the wrong time, the halach is, of course, it's forbidden to eat that animal, and as well, you're chayiv in karis. So that is going to be different. That if you eventually were going to have a karis due to the fact whether it's mishtana l'machshavas psol or not. Says the Gemara, we're going to finish up with this at the end of Vavam Beis Lishmai Vishalai Lishmai Visharim Shana. If you have a dual intent, you shech the animal for Lishma, then Shalai Lishma. So all the year long, Rabbun Bar Chia B'Shem Shmuel Bar Pa Bar Abba Mikiva Shein Loishim Nasik Shachta Lishmai Vishalai Lishmai Vishtigu V'Kasher. Of course, it's just remind yourselves that the din of the Karban Pesach is on Yontif. It has to be Lishman. If it's not Lishman, it's possible. But after Yontif, the whole year, if you shech the Karban Pesach, Shalai Lishmai, it's going to be kosher. So that's why over here, when you shech the animal Lishmai and Shalai Lishmai, now we got to figure out which way it goes. So says the Gemara, Rabbun Bar Chia B'Shem Shmuel Bar Abba, he explains, Mikimash Iloi Shem Nasa L'Shach Lishmai. It's always as if you did a Lishma, Shalai Lishma B'Shtiku, and it's going to be kosher. Because a subsequent intent of Shalai Lishma, which of course is better because it's not during Pesach, will uproot any prior kavanas you had. Amar Leim Kain, who afilu shachta lishmai, amanas lizik davar Shalai Lishmai. So even if you did a different avodah, Yasim Isha Rishayna Kishachta Lishmai, first moment it should be as if it's Lishma. Vishalai Lishma Bishtika, the kosher. So it's going to come out that it should be kosher. First you had intent for Lishma and Shalai Lishmai. Then you had intent Shalai Lishma. So the original intent should be like Shtika, therefore it should be good. On that says Gemara, nothing doing. Amar Rav Abba Bar. Amar Rav Abba Mari. My nemer b'shtika kosher, nemer b'shtika pasal. There's a fundamental difference between these two cases. In one case, the entire shtika was in the same carbon, and then in the Pesach, and then afterwards, while you're shecht in the Pesach, you have the right intent, which is really shaloi lishma over Pesach. But over here, in the other case of Rabbun, the case was what was the shchita, what was the zrika, and therefore that's the reason why it potentially could be different. We'll pick up from here tomorrow.